Greetings, friends. Hello to you from Wisconsin. I am in my childhood home, which has changed in a lot of ways and not at all in other ways. I'm here visiting family. It's one of those gray Wisconsin winter days where you've been teased with a few hints of weather warmth into thinking that spring is here. And then the gods of banal weather that rule over Wisconsin slam you with like 3 weeks of just slate gray skies, chilly weather, occasional rainfall. So I'm a little bit in the seasonal affective disorder mode today. And that's perfect because I got an email from a friend of mine who's also a Zen teacher. And the crux of this email is, what do I do when I lose faith? In his case, it's what do I do when I lose faith in Zen? But I think it's a question that has broader implications than just Zen. Like, what do we do when we lose our juju, when we lose our mojo, when we get a little bit depressed, when we're down, when we lose our faith, period, faith in life, faith in this project, faith in whatever it is we believe in and live for. I'm going to read you his email. Okay, my dear friend's email starts out, what should I do? So, today I was reading Dogen's Shobogenzo Zui Monkey, which was not actually written by Dogen, but was a kind of record kept by his attendant, Eijo. He gives us loads of very short pieces, supposedly recording what he could recall of talks Dogen gave. So my friend is a scholar, and he's practices in the Soto tradition, and he also teaches in the Soto tradition. Goes on to say, in the one I read today, Dogen talks about a sick man who visited him and said, as soon as I get better, I'm gonna build a hut near your temple, Mr. Dogen, and I'm gonna devote myself to listening to your talks and practicing with the monks. But he gets sicker and never builds his hut. A year later, when he's nearly dead, he goes and takes the precepts from Dogen, and then, says Dogen, he dies peacefully. So then Dogen tells his monks, it would have been better if the guy had built his hut a year earlier and spent his final year practicing. His final year of life, Dogen says, would have been much better if this clown would have come here and started practicing in that final year of his life. Okay? Dogen then gives an inspirational sermon, how to practice when you're sick. Talks a little bit about that. And so my friend says, I was thinking. So my friend is as I think I said, I just shot something and then I deleted it because it sucked. So now I can't remember what I've been saying, but my friend is a practitioner in the, I think I said this. My friend is a practitioner and he also teaches, okay? So, but I was thinking, would I ever say that about my own thing? My friend is asking me. So would I ever have that kind of faith in my own thing, my own Zen practice, my own offering to my students? Would I ever be able, well, let's see what he says. Would I say that it would be better for someone to come and practice with me if he was possibly gonna die in a year? I would not, my friend says. I mean, if he wanted to practice, I do my best to help out, but I can't see myself recommending it instead of, say, being with his family or finally going on that Hawaiian vacation he always put off or whatever. I certainly would not advise someone to leave his home and practice with me. He said, I just don't have the faith that a year of Zen practice would be better than whatever else the guy might do with his remaining year of life. It's very powerful, you know? And he goes on to rant a little bit, and then he says, anyway, what should I do now that I've lost faith in Zen? Okay, so I've studied with a few Japanese Rinzai Zen masters in my lifetime. And the energy that Dogen is bringing bringing in this story, wherein he says that this guy should have spent his last year of life practicing with me. That kind of energy, that kind of hubris, it is a kind of hubris. It's a kind of confidence. That chutzpah is very common with the Rinzai Zen Roshis or Zen Masters that I've practiced with. So right off the bat, I want to say it's traditional, I think, to be the kind of model when you're a Zen master, like Dogen was in this story, or like my own teacher was that I studied with. You are expected, if you're in that role, to be a model of practice that is no holds barred. So you're a kind of inspiration to the community. And this is important and interesting. I'm here, man. I'm here back in Wisco, baby. There's a firearm on the wall. I'm definitely back in Wisco. Listen, I was raised Catholic, and in Catholicism, you had priests, and the priests were the holders of the lineage, but they didn't have to be an inspiration necessarily to the community. They simply have to enact the rituals that make the religion living. That was the priest's job, is to enact the rituals that bring God to the community. So the priest has a certain amount of inherent power in his role. I have worked a little bit with teachers in the Tibetan tradition. And one of the teachers that I worked with and that I knew would offer, I guess you could call it, an exegesis of sutras. And within that exegesis were teachings about Buddhism and lessons for how to live your life. Now you get to Zen Buddhism. What do you have? Okay? What do you have? This is like a really important question that we had to ask at our monastery when my teacher got sick and couldn't teach anymore. We were a top-down organization, and he was the grand poobah. And suddenly I was the head monk, and I had to hold these retreats. And it was like, oh no, we don't have koan practice anymore. We don't have teishos or a Zen master giving a lecture to the community anymore. We've just got a bunch of Caucasian schmucks running around with shaved heads in robes that are imported from Japan. We don't know how to inspire this community. And that was when I really began to realize that so much of a Zen master's job is to stand in front of that community and begin to let these people project their greatest spiritual aspirations onto a figurehead who won't let them down until such a point that they can reclaim those projections and consider them as a responsibility for themselves, right? Zen practice, in my experience, it's a bit of a, I don't want to say scam, but it's a bit of a scam in the sense that it doesn't offer anything. And the less it offers, the more Zen it is. I've been talking about this lately a lot in my videos, and I guess I'm coming back around to this again. But in a lot of ways, even when I would do koan practice with my teacher, and that was one of the most precious and unique experiences of my life. But in a sense, my teacher was always just trying to get me to stand on my own 2 feet. He used to say, everybody has the same center of gravity. Everybody has Buddha's center of gravity. So in the Zen tradition, they're not going to focus on sutras. They're not going to focus on, for example, the Catholic priest who brings Jesus down into a wafer of unleavened bread and passes it along to the community. Not going to focus on certain techniques or upayas. There's always this quest in Zen to get rid of the techniques and the upayas and to experience reality or the moment as it is, here and now. All of which is to say, it is in the job description of a Zen master to raise the fire in the bellies and the hearts of their community. And it gets real tricky because the community comes to idolize the teacher, and then they can come to feel like second rate at best in the presence of the teacher. And a lot of weirdness can arise from this dissonance between Zen master and student. For example, there was this student in my community who, this is crazy, this guy was hardcore. And you do this long schedule every single day that you're up at 3 in the morning and then you're going to bed at 10 at night, and every minute in between is formal Zen practice. As if that's not enough, right? But then at the end of the night, you're asked, or you're sort of passive-aggressively pushed into doing practice after the practice, voluntary practice, which was called yaza, right? So it's like informal, voluntary practice after you've nearly brutalized yourself all day doing normal required practice. Now you've got you're passively aggressively pushed to do extra practice, right? So there was this monk who was, I think he had some mental health issues or issues of some kind. He was just eccentric. Let's leave it at that. And he had a piece of wood and he hammered nails up through the wood. And I think he put, I was told this story, so I'm probably getting it wrong, but he put this thing in his lap. And you know, when you're sitting in Zen, you start to fall asleep and you start to go forward. And every time he went forward, the nails would push in his stomach and he would wake up. And one of the reasons he did this is because he was trying to push himself even beyond the absolute extreme, beyond every possible human limit in order to keep up with his teacher or where he thought his teacher was at. So partially my point is that being a Zen master is a really, really, really privileged position. And no matter how hard the students work, they're never going to catch up to the Zen master. They're never going to be as strong or as wise or as big or as small or as slippery or as solid. Whatever the metric, the student is never going to be able to live up to the teacher, because the teacher's job is to be this massive body of practice that exerts such a gravitational pull on their students that they're pulled right out of themselves. And then they have a little, I'm not who I thought I was. I'm not trapped in that little provincial role of the small self that was born in, for example, in my case, in Wisconsin, to conservative Catholic parents in a white man's body, etc., etc. Like, there's a bigger picture that I'm a part of, and it's like the teacher's job to help get you there and inspire you. It's the teacher's job to be no holds barred, and they've got a whole community behind them, pushing them and inspiring them and being inspired by them. I mean, Dogen was the model of practice for his whole community, and he had students who were investing him with such spiritual responsibility. I saw what that did for and to my teacher. I saw how people would come to him. One of his students came after his son committed suicide, and he came right after that to a retreat to my teacher, and I mean, the guy was like, help, you know? Can you imagine that? I mean, that's what these Zen masters are dealing with. That's what a Zen master like Dogen is dealing with. Someone is coming to him like, I'm dying, help me, you know? My teacher had to deal with a guy who came to him and said, my son just killed himself, help me. And my teacher did. And that student told me afterwards, he said, it's like Roshi opened up the top of my head and was in there tweaking my brain and my emotional state like I was a machine, and he was tuning me. That's literally what he said. Now, I don't know what Roshi did. Half of this is probably projection, and half of it is the teacher being able to meet the student's projections. It's part of the role of a Zen master. But I don't think that we should all hold ourselves to these kinds of standards, because it makes us weird, okay? Like, it makes you into a phony, like a hard-charging Zen dork. And all of us monks were like that at one point or another. We really put on the robes, shave the heads, learn a few Japanese terms, and imitate. I call it, it's like cosplaying a Zen master from the Hekigan Roku. Okay, so that's part one of this video. I don't think we can or should, in my experience, I don't like to compare myself to the paragons of the tradition, because I think a lot of times, like, I mistake the way that they shine in their role. I mistake that for Zen itself. So it's like, if I can't shine in my life the way that they are shining in their role, if I can't bring as much energy to my practice as they bring to their role as the teacher, then I'm a hopeless case. But I think that maybe true Zen and true Buddhism is not what you see necessarily in the role of the teacher, in the role of the master. A lot of what you're seeing is that person having to inspire a community. Like I said, having to be this great big mass of practice that exerts a gravitational pull on the surrounding body of practitioners and pulls them out of themselves. So you should shake off that provincial tiny me mindset, the mindset of our tiny little zip code mindset, let's call it, like the zip code of me, that I begin and end right here with my first and last name. So specifically, my friend asked, what do you do when you lose faith in Zen? And I find myself asking, what do you mean by Zen, right? When I was at the monastery, I mean, oh man, I would have moments where I just didn't know if I could do it anymore. And I would be phoning it in on certain days. And I remember, I'll never forget this, when my mentor told me, he said, if you're going on 80%, that is more than enough. You're doing 100%. Even 80% at this place is orders of magnitude more than enough. And I really appreciated that when he said that. And he was totally honest. And I knew that he was right. I knew that my 80% was 100%. So sometimes your 60% is 100%. Sometimes your 40% is your 100%. Sometimes you can't go at 100%, 100% of the time. And when we say Zen and faith in Zen, what do we mean? So does it mean you've lost faith in the teachings, in the sutras, in the stories of the Zen masters, in the practices, in koan practice, or just let's talk about Zazen? Zazen is sitting meditation, sitting Zen. That's mostly what most people think of when they word associate with Zen, a monk sitting. So have you lost faith in that? And then what is it? Well, sitting in one spot, breathing in and breathing out. How can you lose faith in that? You can't lose faith in oxygen coming in and oxygen coming out. When I have lost faith in Zen or in Buddhism, which happens to me a lot, it's usually woven in with some kind of deeper mood or almost depression having to do with my life, having to do with the being unable to bring a certain kind of energy into the same old shit. And Zen practice really is just the same old shit. I mean, every day you sit, you hold your hands in the same way, you cross your legs, and you stare at the ground. And you do it, and you do it, and you do it, day after day after day after day. And then one day you just say, I'm tired of this. I can't do this anymore. I don't think this works. I don't have faith in this anymore. And then what do? I don't think there's anything you can do. I don't think there's anything you can... nothing can bring a person's faith back. I think it has to come back. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't ever quite come back in the same way, and you move on. But like in my own experience, there's even a Zen way to do a loss of faith in Zen practice, right? Like, that's the position I always find myself in. I mean, I'm not gonna find anything else, because Zen is just doing stuff completely and being aware of it. It's making complete relationship, moment after moment after moment, manifesting zero, your own center of gravity, which is the center of gravity that everybody manifests. Okay, what the hell does all that mean? Well, there were principles that we were putting into practice at the monastery, and there's nothing within those principles that one has to have faith in. Zen isn't the kind of thing you can have faith in. It's just not, it's not a belief system. It's not a thing. Zen is not a thing. So you don't have to have faith in it. And you don't have to worry about losing your faith in it. The situation doesn't change either way. The truth doesn't change either way. In Zen, they would say the original face or the Buddha nature, you know. And again, I get tired of these words, and I get tired of the flavor of Zen. I'm a Midwestern dude. Look at this. I'm not a black robes and a shaved head and a strict gasho bao kind of guy, right? I lose faith in all of that. I lose faith in these hard-charging Zen masters who tell you to come practice with them on your deathbed. No, go to Disney World on your deathbed. Spend your deathbed with your loved ones and make that your Zen. Zen is just doing activities completely so that your ego dissolves and connection manifests. One heart, one mind, true self manifests. And then in the next moment, oh shoot, I'm back in my crummy little self again, and that's cool too. I get to experience life from the perspective of the ego or the self, and I get to connect with my surroundings and make relationship, manifest zero, as my teacher called it, or Buddha nature all over again. And you know what? Like sometimes you can't connect completely. You can only connect 80%. Sometimes your 80% effort is your 100% effort. That's, I think, the message for today's fucking like half-ass video. Sometimes 50%, 40% is your 100%, you know? But no matter what you do, it's all Zen. There's no escaping it. If you want to support my escaping from Zen, to Zen, you can go here, patreon.com/showzon, Jack Hobner. Thank you for your support over on Patreon. I'm so deeply grateful to the people on Patreon. I feel so blessed to have those people over there. I mean, in keeping with today's theme, there was a time when I used to have to manifest that Zen teacher energy, where you put on your robes, you put on your rukasu, you tie your Osho belt in the special Osho belt tie, and then you do your bows, and you hold your body a certain way, and you stand in front of a congregation, and you have to lead and inspire people in the role of Zen teacher. And I did that role. And, you know, I'm much happier in this role that I'm in now, being able to speak completely honestly about what I feel is the essence of what Zen is in the world. And sometimes it's very, very simple and very, very humbling. Sometimes it's just, like I said, 40% awareness during a given day. Like I'm barely present, but it's enough. Maybe there's one moment where my awareness touches inside and outside, and clear seeing manifests. Maybe that's enough. Whereas when you're a Zen teacher, you always kind of have to be performing in that role. It's a performance of a role, you know? So I'm extremely grateful to be able to keep making these videos in the context of a lay Zen priest, which is sort of like my robes are kind of on ice, as it were, dormant, as it were. I'm a lay Zen priest, and really blessed, I feel like, to be able to make these videos, and I make them for free. But like I said, if you want to support this channel, you can go here to patreon.com/shozanjackcobbler. Friends, I gotta go see my beautiful sister and her beautiful little daughter. This daughter is so awesome. She's like a tomboy, and she wears this bandana everywhere she goes. And like, she's got so much energy that I just put up my hand, and I'm like, she just bam, 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 bam. She just spends the next 20 minutes punching it, you know? So I gotta go get my hand punched. So I'll see you later.